reading. Yes, I asked you to do 2 readings to prepare for today's session. So maybe we should start with a very easy question, okay? Input obviously means receptive skills, but what are the receptive skills? Takwa, you want to tell us? Takwa.
I want to answer.
Go.
I think reading and listening, because when you listen more, you can speak more. And when you read more, you can write more.
Good. Okay. It's important what you've said, that there is, immediately you have said that there is a link between reading and listening. These are the receptive skills, and speaking and writing, which are the productive skills. So that's a useful start. Thank you. Okay. So, so the receptive skills are reading and listening. And for homework this week, I asked you to read 2 of the Ellis's principles. Firstly, I asked you to look at principle 6, the importance of input. And Krashen says that only 2 things are necessary for language acquisition. What are they? And also, in what 2 ways can teachers help help learners get this input? Okay, so Hala, you have your hand up. Can you tell us the answers?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
For the first question, according to, I guess, the comprehensibles input is the first one. The input must be made understandable to the learners, and 2, motivation.
Excellent, Hala. Okay.
Learners need
Yes.
to be motivated to acquire the language.
Excellent. Thank you, Hala. And yes, right at the beginning of this course, you all talked about the importance of motivation. You said that students need dedication and perseverance. Good. And the second question was, in what 2 ways can teachers help learners get this comprehensive input? Asil, are you happy to answer?
Yes. The second question, the answer, provide opportunities outside the classroom, extensive reading programs, self-access centers, and training students to utilize these resources effectively, and increase the second language use in the classroom, make the target language both the medium and subject of instruction.
Fantastic answer. Thank you, Asil. Okay, so just to check the answers, Hala said, yep, comprehensible input and motivation. Okay, and Asil was right. Maximize second language use inside the classroom and exploit opportunities outside the classroom. Okay, so these are Ellis's ideas. You know that we are meeting Ellis, Professor Ellis, in 2 weeks' time. And one thing I'm interested, I want you to start to think about is, what questions would you like to ask Professor Ellis? Because he, as Nazmi knows, Professor Ellis is super important in the field of English language teaching. So if you have any questions, you can ask him. So you have 2 weeks to think. So, for example, Asil, you said that one of the things that Ellis says is to maximize second language use inside the classroom. And Ellis wrote this 20 years ago, in 2005. But since 2005, a lot of people have been thinking, that maybe it's a good idea to allow first language use inside the classroom. You know, in the last 15 years, the use of the first language has become quite a big topic. Do any of you have any feelings about, for example, using Arabic in the English language classroom?
I don't think that's right to use Arabic in English classes, because when you are acquiring a new language, you need to think in this language, not using your first one.
Okay, so was that Esra, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Esra. So you agree with what Ellis writes in, or what he wrote in 2005? And
Yes, I agree.
I
And I
think,
think when you learn a second language, you also acquire a new character. So when I speak in English, I feel like I'm having a new personality and new thoughts. So we need to feel this and only this, not to go back to our first language.
that's very interesting, Esra. I feel the same when I speak in Italian. I also think in Italian sometimes, and sometimes I feel more confident in Italian. Sometimes I have a different personality, Estra. So I think I agree with you. But many people in the last 15 years, many theorists have started to say, no, it's okay. There are times when we can use the first language inside the classroom. So maybe this is something that I will ask Professor Ellis, you know, what if he has changed his mind in the last 20 years. So everybody, start to think of questions for Professor Ellis. Okay, let's continue. Okay, do you remember these names? Krashen, yes, we've talked about Krashen today. De Keyser and Ellis. Well, yes, we've talked about Ellis today. These people were talking about the difference between explicit and implicit knowledge. And just to remind you, De Keyser says that via communication, explicit knowledge can become implicit knowledge. And Ellis says the teacher can help learners see a gap between the input and their own output. Like a light bulb moment. This was like our used to and would lesson, discovery learning. And Krashen says there's no interface. It's pointless to try to develop explicit knowledge. Students just need lots of input and they'll work out the rules for themselves. Okay? So for Krashen, okay, excuse me, my slides are in the wrong order. I've made a mistake with my slides. So for Krashen, obviously for Krashen, reading and listening are very, very important. If you believe Krashen's point of view about language learning, then reading and listening, the receptive skills, input, today's topic, becomes super, super important if you agree with Krashen. If you have a different opinion, for example, if you agree with De Keyser about communication, then maybe you have you think that reading and listening are less important. Okay, so it's interesting that important language theorists have different opinions. Okay, now, excuse me. Normally, I teach this lesson and then I give my students a quiz. But because you are good students, I'm going to turn my lesson on its head and I'm going to start with the quiz. Okay? Are you happy? I'm putting you under some pressure. Okay? So here is my quiz for you. A little receptive skills quiz. Now, please, don't talk. Just read and think. for 1 minute or for 2 minutes. Just read and think. And then we can talk. One more minute. Okay, so the first question then, why ask some questions before students read or listen? So imagine you're going to do a reading lesson. You want to give the students some questions. Why is that a good idea? Mice.
Because it's a good approach called pre-reading and pre-listening, because it activates prior knowledge and helps students to recall what they already know about the topic, and that makes it easier to them to understand the new information.
What a fantastic answer. That's a very good answer, Mice. Good. Okay, quickly, let's move on to the second time. Imagine you are doing a reading or a listening lesson. How many times should the students read or listen, do you think? Manar.
I think twice. The first time to focus on main idea, and the second time to focus on details.
Well done. Another very clear answer, Manar. Excellent. Okay, let's move on to the third question. Why do you give students a non-verbal task to do? So not writing sentences when they answer, but ticking or matching or putting something in the correct order or matching heading to paragraph. Why would you do that? Esra.
I think to know if we're getting the idea correctly and if we are comprehending properly for what we are reading or listening for.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. Yeah. And Esther, why would it be unfair to ask the students to write sentences? Do you have an idea?
Because when I read, I need to understand what I'm reading and to comprehend this reading, not to write.
Exactly.
We have, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a writing lesson. It's a reading lesson. So maybe if I give Nancy a lesson and her reading is fantastic, but her writing is not so very good, and then maybe she writes and makes some mistakes, she will feel bad. And that would exactly what you said, Esra. It's not fair, okay, because today it's a reading lesson. So that's why ticking boxes, matching pictures to text is a good option. Very good answer, Esra. Okay, question. What should the teacher do while the students are reading or listening? Zaina, what do you think?
I think he should have a distance between him and between the teacher and the student, and the teacher should be quiet.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah. You know, I am very glad that I gave you the quiz first, because your answers are, we say in English, your answers are spot on. Do you know what that means? Spot on. What does it mean? If your answers are spot on, it means they're perfect. Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Zaina. Yeah. Basically, Zaina is right. The teacher should maintain a distance and should be quiet, because it's difficult to read if somebody is talking in the background. It's difficult to listen if somebody is talking in the background. Well done. Thank you, Zainab. The next question. I think I will ask somebody new now. Why get students to discuss answers in pairs before answering in front of the class? Nada. No, excuse me. Sondos. Sondos.
Yes, to build confidence, students can test and refine their idea in a low pressure setting before speaking in front of whole class, and to encourage participation. Pair work ensures that every student has a chance to engage with the material, even those how may be hesitant to contribute in a larger group.
Well done. That's another good answer, Sondos. Thank you so much. Yeah. And Sondos, I will add one more thing, or maybe Takwa, Hala, do you think you can add anything to what Sondos said? Sondos. Yeah, Takwa.
To help each other as students think together and exchange idea. This also gives the teacher a chance to mentor what we say, and maybe this time the teacher can also review what you will say or do.
Well done. Yeah, I think that you've added a couple of useful things there. So like Sondos said, it builds confidence and it allows people to exchange, like Takwa said, it allows people to exchange their ideas. And I think, Takwa, you also said it gives the teacher a chance to think about the next part of the lesson, because teaching is, you have to keep a lot of things in your head. So it's nice to have 1 minute during pair work to return to your lesson plan. Good. Okay, I'm going to move on to the last question then. Why shouldn't you correct grammar while students are doing a reading or listening comprehension question? Manar, what do you think?
I think the lesson speak about reading and listening, not grammar.
Yes, a good answer. Again, very accurate answer. If your grammar is weak, but your reading is strong, and I correct your grammar, you will feel bad. And maybe next time you will not speak to me. So that's a very good answer, Manar. Well done. Excellent. I'm glad I gave you the quiz first, because you obviously know a lot. Okay. I don't need to show you the answers, but very quickly, why ask some questions before students read or listening? To give them something to focus on. Otherwise, they'll try to understand everything and they'll fail and they'll get demoralized. How many times should students read or listen? Twice, first for gist and once for gist and once for detail. Why give students a non-verbal task to do? Because we're testing their comprehension, not their writing skills. What should the teacher do while students are reading or listening? Be quiet, monitor, check. Why get students to discuss answers in pairs before class feedback? Students can check together. It increases students' talking time. It gives a teacher a chance to look at the lesson plan. And why shouldn't you correct grammar while students are answering reading or listening comprehension questions? Because the focus of the lesson is a receptive skill, not grammar. Good, you were very good there. And you know the basic stages of a receptive skills lesson. You've told me this already. You need a lead in to set the context, to raise students' interest, to activate their schemata. Activate their schemata. Who can tell me what it means to activate students' schemata? Nazmi.
Actually, maybe to,
Oh.
can I complete?
Is that
Okay, maybe, yeah, Amna. Maybe to activate,
please?
yeah, I think it means to activate and encourage their critical thinking and analyzing, like this.
Not exactly, no. It's something different. Schemata is something different. Well, somebody talked about this at the beginning of the lesson. Mais, have you got an idea?
Maybe to activate their prior knowledge.
Yes, that's right. That's correct. So schemata is it's a plural word. It's an unusual plural word. Singular is schema, plural is schemata, and schemata means prior knowledge. It means everything that you associate with a given situation. So if I say the word dentist to you, what do you associate with the word dentist? Shout out some ideas. You don't need to put your hands up.
It's a job.
Job, continue.
Teeth.
Teeth.
Terror.
Care.
Horrifying.
Terrifying. Anything else? For
Money.
me, money, pain, all of these things are your schemata when you think about the word dentist. And it's very useful to activate the prior knowledge, the schemata, because it helps people to understand. Yeah. Okay, so that's the lead in. And then you give a first reading task for global understanding, and then a second, more detailed task. And lots of possibilities for detailed tasks like true, false questions, comprehension questions. Nazmi, you have your hand up. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Yes. In fact, when I read activate their schemata, this is the term I was associate. I learned from Rod Ellis. I remember now trying what I learned. So what my students are learning now in first year, I learned it when I was doing my master degree.
Okay.
A long time ago. So yeah, that's something looking for. Some terms I learned from Rod Ellis.
Right.
And now it's activating schemata, and I always use it in teaching.
Yeah, it's very important. Yeah,
it is.
We could use simple English like saying activating prior knowledge, but it's very useful because it helps students to understand what is likely to what is likely to appear in the listening or the reading text.
Yeah, so the students are not seen as a blank slate.
Perfect. That's a nice way of putting it. Yeah. Okay, so for tips for the first reading or listening task, you could ask students to predict what topics might come up, predict the order of topics. So maybe you show the students a picture and they can predict what topics might come up. Or you give them all of the topics. The students have to predict the order of the topics. Or you give them a title, or 3 or 4 titles, and then they listen and they choose the most appropriate title. Okay, so all of these are good gist tasks. And whatever task you give them, the first task should be easy to explain, easy to write on the whiteboard. Really, you're just giving the students a focus for the first time that they read the text. And for a reading lesson, you need to set a time limit that is short. This is to encourage them to skim for overall meaning or to scan for 1 or 2 bits of specific information, depending on the tasks that you've set. Rose, you had your hand up. Did you have a question?
No, but actually I want to say something.
Go.
Actually, the idea that I wanted to add is like what we had last time, that we can give a brainstorm to the students and tell them about the topic that they're listening or the reading is about, and ask them if they know it or they have any.
Yeah, I'm glad you added that word, Ruse, because brainstorming is very common at the beginning of a lesson when you're setting the context, when you throw ideas onto the whiteboard from the students. Thank you, Ruse. Brainstorm, an important word, yeah. And then we have tips for the second reading and listening phase. So lots of options, comprehension questions, for example. This time, you give them a time limit, which is longer than for the first time, the first task. You need to monitor and check that the students understand the task. Help if it's necessary. And then you need to end the task when more than 50% have completed it. Whoa, that's an interesting thing. In my experience, I always like to end a task, a reading task, when I see that 50 or 60% have completed the task. Why? Why do I do that? Why would it be bad to wait until 100% of the class have finished the reading? Manar. Manar, did you have your hand up?
Do you intend to leave something on the students to do by their own? If they don't get it in the class, they have to do it in home, maybe? I don't know.
No, that's a good idea. And yes, it's possible that I would say finish it at home, but usually I don't. Usually I say, let's check the answers in pairs. I don't wait until everybody has finished reading. What would be the problem if you wait until everybody has finished reading? Manar, have you?
Maybe because the students have different abilities. So if you want to wait for everyone, you'll waste time, maybe.
Yes, who gave this answer? Excuse me?
Allah.
Allah, that's a good answer. Yeah, everybody will have a different abilities in the class. And if you wait for everybody to finish, then Allah, you said you will waste time, and that's true, but you will also lose energy in the class. Have you ever noticed that a good class has energy? And if you lose the energy in the class as a teacher, it's difficult to pull it back. So that's why I usually end the task when I see that most of the students have completed it. Yeah. Okay, but sometimes I do give the say finish for homework. Yeah. Okay. So far, we've only talked about top-down ways to approach reading or listening text. That means top-down means global understanding to specific understanding. But maybe we could help learners by going in the other direction. So, for example, instead of top-down, we go bottom-up. So, for reading, a bottom-up approach means building meaning from the small, like think of the word, let's have a think, the word impossibility. Impossibility. So it's important to understand the main part of the word, possible. and then we change it to a noun, possibility, and then we make it opposite, impossibility. So it's useful for students to know how suffixes, prefixes work. Another example could be discourse markers, like however, or therefore, also. These are very useful words for understanding sentences, or bottom up. So I will give you an example. I will give you a word which none of you understand. Maybe not even Nazmi understands this word. Okay? Are you ready? Here's a word. Discombobulated. Don't look it up don't look it up in your dictionaries. Just listen. Discombobulated. Okay, it's an adjective. You know it's an adjective because of the ending. Yeah? Or it's probably an adjective. Okay? So, listen to a sentence. At university on the first day, I was discombobulated. However, after I made some friends, I felt happy. Okay? Again. At university on the first day, I was discombobulated. However, after I made some friends, I was okay. So, my question is, discombobulated, is it a positive or a negative thing?
Negative.
Negative.
What makes you say that?
Because the
they-
word however shows the contrast, and the
Because they-
second sentence, it's a good feeling, so the first one should be negative.
Fantastic. So that shows you how discourse markers can be quite useful in creating bottom-up understanding when you're reading. Good. Well done. Okay. Takwa, do you have a question?
I want to add in because it starts with this. This means negative.
Yeah, that's a fantastic example.
Very good.
Yes, very good example of using the prefix to help you with bottom-up understanding. That's a really good answer. Thank you. Okay, so that was for reading, and then bottom-up techniques for listening by working on, for example, sound discrimination. Now, I know I teach many Arabic speakers English, and I know that Arabic speakers have this difficulty sometimes between and b. Yeah? Do you have this problem yourselves?
Yeah, when you have to pronounce it with more stress, B
Yeah.
or P.
Well done. That's good pronunciation. Yeah. Yeah. So I know that that I can help my Arabic speaking learners who want to become English language teachers to discriminate between these two sounds, which I think do not exist in Arabic. Okay. And for example, my wife, she's Italian, and she has a problem between I and E, ship and sheep, for example. So, you know, you can work on these to help your students with their bottom up, with the receptive skills in listening. Yeah. And then we have the way that sounds change in connected speech, for example, elision, gonna go instead of I'm going to go, gonna go, or contractions instead of going to, gonna. Okay, so that's a way we can help bottom up. We can point out the changes of stress and intonation. we can explore communicative function. For example, the non-one-to-one equivalence between form and function. We talked before about, it's cold in here. What does that mean? Maybe it means please close the window. Yeah. Okay. So we've looked at top-down methods to help students and bottom-up methods. Now, teachers often use, in the last 30, 40 years, top-down methods have become very fashionable. But very recently, people have started to think, no, we also need to work on the bottom-up as well. The problem is the bottom-up takes a long time, a lot of time in the classroom to work on these things, okay? And top-down, you can do it quite quickly in the first 10 minutes of your lesson, yeah? You can activate the student schemata very quickly in the first 10 minutes of the lesson, which is why the top-down has become so fashionable, because it's quite nice and easy for the teacher to do. Okay, so let's imagine you've now finished the receptive skills part of the lesson. So you've done your reading. What do you do when you've finished your reading part of the lesson? What could you do next? Takwa.
Practice, like do activities to use the new knowledge.
Well done. Yes, we could. So good. So a reading lesson is often a springboard into a speaking lesson, yeah, or a writing lesson. So at the beginning of today's lesson, one of the students mentioned this. I can't remember who. You mentioned that it's difficult to separate the 4 skills, and it's true. So once you finish the receptive skills part of the lesson, it's often you will move into a productive skills part of the lesson, but not, you've really got 2 options. You could also, the first option is you could start a language lesson. That is, you could pull some grammar or vocabulary out of the text to study. I call this a language lesson, a grammar lesson, a vocabulary lesson, okay? And this is what we did for used to and would. Do you remember my lesson on used to and would?
Yes.
Yeah. How did you see the words used to and would? Where did they appear?
From the context.
Can you be more precise? You're correct.
In your summer holiday and your childhood holiday.
Yeah, and can you be even more? Excuse me?
We use them in the past.
Yeah.
Talk about the past.
But did you listen to me talking about them, or did you read them?
We read them.
Read.
Yes. This is it. Good. So really, I did a reading lesson, and then I pulled the grammar not the vocabulary. I pulled the grammar out of the text. I pulled used to and would out of the text. So with my childhood holidays lesson, I started with a reading text, and then we pulled the grammar out of it. And probably I would continue and do a productive skills phase. So you can personalize about, for example, childhood holidays for yourself or for the students. Or you could do a writing task, okay? Or you could do both. Okay. So we'll move on and look at the second part of your homework, which was Ellis's principle number 7, which is the importance of output. And output means the productive skills. So, Takwa, tell us which skills they are.
Writing and speaking.
Well done, good. All right, writing and speaking, yes. And this was your homework. Ellis says that Skian gives 7 contributions that output can make. And in my opinion, all of these contributions make sense, except for one. So, yeah, let's see which one are you not sure about? And we will see if it's the same one that I'm not sure about. Okay, Sondos, which one were you not sure about?
I think 6 contribution, helping learners develop a personal voice by steering conversation toward topics that they are interested in. This could be considered less directly related to the grammatical or syntax processing essential for language acquisition, and more about the social aspects for language learners.
That's an interesting answer. I agree. This is definitely less about grammar and more about social. Yeah, that's true. That's a good answer. But, Sondos, it's not the one that I had a problem with. I had a problem with a different one. Okay, anyone else? Nada, have you got an idea?
I think it is providing the learner with auto input, because as I understood, this refers to learners benefiting from listening to their own language productions. However, this might seem less impactful compared to other contributions, as learners might not easily notice errors or gaps in their own speech without external feedback.
Yeah, Nada. This is the I agree. This is the one that I had a problem with. Now,
actually, it's not you that the only one who have problem with, because this is the answer of the AI. I have asked AI, and he had given me the same answer.
Interesting. Well,
may I say something?
Yeah. Yes, of course. Who is this?
Taqwa.
Takwa, go.
I think auto input because it depends on the learner's ability to recognize and correct their mistakes without external help like teacher, another, and it may not be effective for beginners or learners who don't have good self learning skills.
What do you think, Takwa? What's your personal opinion? Do you think when you are speaking in English that you can hear when you make a mistake all the time? Well, not sometimes. Can you hear when you make a mistake, Takwa?
Yes.
Okay. So then you agree with Ellis. You think that auto input is a possible, useful thing. Yeah. Okay. Now, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. But
Can I add something?
Yes. Who is this? Isra. Yeah.
Isra. Yes. I want to say that, like, a couple of days ago, I had a discussion with a native speaker about if I'm aware of the grammar errors that I make, and I answered that I'm aware of my mistakes and my errors, but only after I spell the sentence that I want to say. So, because when I speak without thinking, I just say what I have, and then, yeah, I did something wrong here and something wrong here. We are aware, but only after we finish speaking.
Yeah, I think that's quite a good answer. I spoke to, the course that I am doing with you, I also do with my students in Northumbria University. And I had the same discussion with them on Tuesday. And I said, I find number 7 difficult. And one of my students disagreed with me, and she said, no. it's possible to hear when you are making mistakes. And when I thought about it, I changed my mind, and I think it is possible to hear when I am making mistakes. But I agree with Esra, the difficult thing is to correct them. And I think the problem for me is the same as the problem for Esra, that you understand that you've made a mistake 10 seconds after it comes out of your mouth. Yes, Esra?
Yeah, exactly. And what's the purpose here? I already said what I want to say.
Yeah, but the purpose would be to avoid making the mistake in the future. Yeah, and maybe that is something that you can do. Okay. Yeah. But in 2 weeks' time, we are meeting Professor Ellis. So perhaps this is another question that I can ask him. Okay. But I think he is right now. I've thought about this more. Okay. Okay. So let's go back to the 7 ideas. So the first one is production generates better input through feedback. So for example, if I am speaking to a learner, if I'm learning in French and I am speaking to another learner, okay, then I can get, the other person will give me better input, okay, and their feedback will force me to produce better production, okay. So, and the second one is some people, for example, Long, believe that syntactic processing is the way that we learn language, okay? The only way that we learn language is by forcing ourselves to communicate, okay? So, of course, production will become a very important part of this. The third one is it can allow us to test our hypotheses, our ideas about language. The fourth one, it helps to automatize our knowledge. So something we say, maybe it takes us 1 minute to say it the first time. The second time we say it, it takes 45 seconds. The third time we say it, it takes 30 seconds. So things become more automatic each time we say it, faster, easier for us to think about what to say. We automatize it. And it provides, number 5, it provides opportunities for us to develop our discourse skills. For example, by producing long turns. Does anybody know what is a long turn? This is a phrase from linguistics, a long turn. No? A long turn is when you are able to speak not for 10 seconds, but for 1 minute or for 2 minutes. Long turns are much more difficult than one sentence replies, okay? So you need certain discourse skills to produce long turns. Another discourse skill, for example, imagine I am talking and talking and talking and talking and talking, and you want to speak. What could you do? What can you do if you want to speak and I am talking and talking and talking and talking and talking? What can you do? Taqwa.
I can say, may I say something?
Good. That's an example of another example of a discourse skill. So Taqwa has given us an example of a polite interruption. Okay, so speaking allows us to develop discourse skills. And then we have number 6, which allows learners to develop a personal voice by moving conversation to topics they are interested in. So imagine I am talking about football, but Nazmi wants to talk about basketball. So it's a skill being able to move the conversation away from football onto basketball, yeah? So onto something that is personal, personally interesting for you, okay? So for all of these reasons, according to Skian, and reported in Ellis, output is a very important skill. Okay, but there are 2 problems for teachers, 2 dilemmas. Okay, the dilemma number 1: if you are engaging learners in meaningful communication, if that is key, if that is important, where should it occur in the learning cycle? Do you do it before you present new grammar, new language, new vocabulary, for example, task-based learning? Or do you do it after you present the new grammar or the new vocabulary? For example, you do the communication. First you present the grammar, and then you practice the communication, and then you produce the communication. So present the grammar, teacher presents the grammar, you do controlled practice of the grammar, and then you do free practice by getting students to produce the grammar or the vocabulary. So that's a question that the teacher, if the teacher thinks that speaking is important, when does it happen? Before you introduce the new grammar or after? Okay. And another dilemma for teachers is that it's difficult to work on complexity and accuracy and fluency all at the same time. It's possible to give students planning time. We talked about this last week, and that can improve fluency. And it can also improve accuracy or complexity. But it's difficult to improve all of these things at the same time. So students or teachers have to accept that if you're working on fluency, maybe the students will remain inaccurate, or their language will remain quite simple. Okay, so it's difficult to juggle the conflicting needs for complexity and accuracy and fluency all at the same time. And there are many types of speaking activities. There are many types of meaning-focused speaking activity. Pair work, we've talked about. Ranking, put things in the order of importance. Doing a survey, a find someone who activity, a problem-solving activity. And when you're setting up activities, learners need to understand what to do and be motivated. Okay? Learners have to be so motivated that they forget the teacher's presence. And for motivation, some time for individual thinking or planning is often very productive. And then, if the students speak a lot, the teacher can monitor and collect exemplars of student output. So excuse me, I'm just, yeah. I'm aware that we don't have a lot of time today, but if in a productive skills lesson, correction is really important, okay? And this linguist, Hendrickson, sees 5 basic issues with the correction of students speaking. So the teacher must ask 5 questions. Should the teacher correct? If so, when? Which errors? How? And who should do the correction? Okay. So, here's a question for you. When you were learning English, or maybe you are still learning English, do you like to be corrected? That's my question. You're still learning English. Do you like to be corrected? What do you think? What's your opinion? Esra, do you like it when the teacher corrects you?
I think yes, but not very much. Like sometimes you're speaking and you want to be corrected and you want to like say it right, but other times you're not giving attention into the grammar or into the like speaking correctly. You're just giving attention into the core of what you're trying to say. So when you're doing this, you won't love to be corrected because you're excited talking about something. But otherwise, yeah, sometimes we need to be corrected.
That's an interesting answer. So sometimes yes, sometimes no. Okay, so how can the teacher know if you want to be corrected, Esra?
Sorry, I didn't hear your question. Can you say it?
Esra, you said sometimes you like to be corrected and sometimes you don't like to be corrected. Yeah. So does that make it difficult for the teacher to know when he or she should correct you?
No, I don't think so, because when I say sometimes I don't like it, it's not a big deal. Like I prefer not to, but if that happens, I'm totally okay with that because he's my teacher or she's my teacher. So this is what's supposed to happen.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it is the teacher's job is to correct. That's a fact. Yes. Asil, you have something to add, do you?
Yes, I like to be corrected, but not while speaking, but after speaking, because when the teacher corrected me during the speaking, it like frequent correction during speaking create stress and discover me make me hesitant and to think of grammar not form like that.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember in the very first lesson, Asil, Nazmi said, it's important to act with bravery and not to worry about making mistakes. So that's a good answer, Asil. Yeah. Yeah. So Asil, you were talking about delayed correction, and we will talk about that in a minute. The difference between on-the-spot correction and delayed correction. Takwa, did you want to add something?
I think yes, because you can learn from my mistake.
Yeah. And Takwa, would you like the teacher to correct every mistake that you make?
No, no.
Yeah. Okay. That's the third question on my slide. Which errors? Yeah, not all errors, but some errors. Yeah. Excuse me. Okay. So we've looked at should correction occur? Most people here seem to say yes. The next question is when, and some people prefer to be corrected afterwards, delayed correction, and that is an answer to the question, how should correction occur? We haven't spoken about the last question yet. Who should do the correction? Who should do the correction? Nada, have you got your hand up for this the final question here? Who should do the correction? Do you have something to say?
Actually, it is not for the last question, but I think it is the teacher. I was raising my hand for the previous question, which is how should correction occur? Because there is a memory that come up through my mind. Or when I was nearly 10 years old or something, I was very stressed when I was reading. So I mixed up two words, which is city and century. And I have been lectured by the teacher very badly. Since that time, I hated to be corrected very much. Like she said, really, seriously, you don't know the difference between city and century? How old are you? I was just 10. So it was really, really hard experience.
That's really interesting, Nada. Yeah. Correction can have a very bad impact on students if the teacher does it badly. Yeah. So thank you for that. Yeah, because when you're a child, of course you're going to make. Everyone makes mistakes. We all make mistakes, even now. Yeah. So it has to be done. It has to be done kindly, doesn't it? You have to be kind. Yeah. Asil, do you have something to add?
Yes, I agree with what Nada said, that correction, I fully agree with the teacher correct our mistakes, but as she said, in by gentle way, because when he corrects my mistakes after speaking, I feel confidence that next time when I speak, I won't make mistake, inshallah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. The teacher, you're right. The teacher has a very important role. Okay. But it is also useful for students to, okay, there in a class, there are 3 people who can do the correction. One is the teacher. Can you think of 2 other people in the class who could do the correction? Takwa.
Myself and other students in the class.
Excellent. Good. Those are the 3 people. A teacher, correct it yourself, or your friend corrects you. Okay. So what do you think is the ideal situation of teacher, correct it yourself, or your friend corrects you? Which is the ideal situation?
Me correcting myself?
Yeah, I think you probably learn more if you can correct yourself and you feel better. Yeah. And then what do you think is the next best thing?
The teacher.
No.
Or the teacher.
I disagree. I think it's nice if your friend can correct you, because yeah,
I think maybe I can correct my mistake myself, or the teacher can correct it from me. And I think only big mistakes, but not small ones. But other students, no.
okay. But the interesting
To be
thing for
honest,
me,
I agree with them.
okay, but the interesting thing for me is, imagine you have a class of 20 students. How many times will the teacher be speaking one-to-one with one student? Not very often.
I think I have another opinion from my my other students. I think I do like when other students correct me or any other one, because sometimes teachers don't get what what we specifically we don't understand. And this happens a lot to me. Like there's a specific point I want clarification, or I don't get it, or I can't use it well. But when I try to explain for my teacher what is exactly that I don't get, they don't get what I mean. But other students can. And it
Why do
happens
you
a lot to me, and like I used to do it and other does it to me.
why do you think that is? Because the teacher is old and your friends are young?
No, but because we're all students and we may all go through this point before, or we all think the same, but the teacher looks from another perspective or another way. But
Yes,
students' perspective is totally different.
I understand. Yeah, you have a fresh memory of the learning situation. Yes, I can see that could be useful, Esra. Yeah. So Hala, did you want to add something?
No, actually, I agree with both Isra and Taqwa and Sundas. But to me, I guess if for my colleagues or my friends in the class, if I love you, it's okay, I'll take it. But if I don't, no, don't correct me.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, this is what I think about.
Can I say something?
Sure. Who is this?
Ala.
Yes, Ella.
Actually, I used to think that teachers feel annoyed when every student corrects their friend, like saying, I'm here, this is my job.
Okay. Okay, Ella. Well, my idea, Ella, is that you can do something. The teacher can do something useful with delayed correction, which involves all of the students and also involves some student to student to correction. So let's start in the middle. After most speaking activities, the teacher, well, no, we start at the top. We've talked about on-the-spot correction, when you correct immediately. And an effective speaking activity will also allow the teacher to monitor and gather student errors, and maybe gather one or two examples of impressive output as well. Now, after most speaking activities, the teacher, this is what I like to do, the teacher should put a selection of sentences on the whiteboard and ask students, one, correct individually in their heads, and then check together in pairs, and then check together whole class via the whiteboard. So all of you are talking together for 10 minutes in English, and I am listening, and I'm gathering mistakes, and then I put some of the mistakes on the whiteboard, and you have to correct individually in your heads, and then check together in pairs, and then we check together whole class. So how many stages are there? How many stages? Correct individually, check together in pairs, check together whole class. There are 3 stages, yeah? So, question for you. If the teacher misses one of these stages, what negative effect will it have? So let's think together. The first stage, correct. Imagine you've got 10 sentences on the whiteboard that the class has made these mistakes. We don't know who, but they're on the whiteboard. If the teacher doesn't say, correct these in your heads, why is that bad?
Can I answer it?
Yeah, who is that?
Zena.
Zaina, yeah.
I think it will affect the students negatively because it will affect their comprehension and skills about thinking. Yeah, that's it.
That's Zaina, that's true, but that's a long-term effect. And I am thinking about a more short-term thing. So imagine I write 10 sentences on the whiteboard and I forget to say, think about these mistakes. And then Nazmi immediately shouts out the correct answers. Why is that bad? If one student immediately shouts out the correct answers.
Is it because students have to extract the mistakes on their own and then think about the correction?
Exactly, that's right. So if Nazmi immediately shouts out the correct answers, then Esra and Asil and Bara and Nancy and Hala, everybody has no chance to think. So they don't have a chance to think about the mistakes. So you have to do the first stage. You have to have 2 minutes of silence while the students read the sentences and correct the mistakes in their heads. So it's bad if the teacher forgets the first part of the correction, the first stage. Let's move on to the second one. What happens if the teacher forgets to say, check together in pairs? Why is that bad? Hala.
Sometimes you see your answer isn't wrong. You don't see the wrong thing on it.
Yeah.
So when you check together with your friend, so maybe he'll notice the wrong thing and will tell you the correct answer.
Fantastic answer, Hala. Thank you. And yeah, maybe you have an idea, but you're not sure. So you can check with your friend. And this is why I think it's nice for one student to help another student with the corrections. Let's look at the last one then. Imagine the teacher forgets the final stage where the class checks together in front of the class with the teacher at the whiteboard. Why would that be a bad thing for the teacher to forget? Hala, have you still got your hand up?
Well, I didn't put it in purpose, but it's okay, I will answer.
Yeah.
I guess maybe the whole class, they don't have the answer for one sentence. And maybe there's one student who didn't get a point from his colleagues. So he will need the teacher to explain it to him.
Exactly. Good. Yeah. Just because Asil and Bara are together and they understand everything, and Zaina and Esra are together and they understand everything, but maybe Nancy and Nazmi are together and they've misunderstood. They still haven't got it right. Nancy doesn't know the answer. Nazmi doesn't know the answer. So that's why it's important to check whole class so that everybody has the correct answer at the end. Yeah, good. Now, writing, unfortunately, I don't have time today to go over writing, okay? But there are many overlaps with speaking, just as listening and reading are both receptive skills, and writing and speaking are both productive skills, okay? Now, I'm afraid, because I have to leave you today at in just 10 minutes time, I'm just going to have to leave my slides for you to look at after the lesson, okay? And I'm sorry, but I want to move on just to the summary of productive skills lesson. It's quite easy to do a good productive skills lesson. For either a speaking or a writing lesson, students have to produce and the teacher has to correct. If the students produce something, speaking or writing, And if the teacher does some correction, probably it will be a good lesson. Okay? And a final point is that I think somebody right at the beginning today said this, that it's very difficult to separate the productive skills from the receptive skills, because often in a good lesson, you will start, for example, with receptive skills, and then you will move on to look to have the students write something or speak about something, maybe a grammar input. It's very difficult to separate things. Okay, so I'm sorry I don't have time to go through writing today, but I want to talk about our lesson for next week. Okay, so I think you know that next week we will have a combined lesson with my students at Northumbria University. And I think you also know that Professor Ellis would like to meet you. Yeah. So I think Salah has already told you all the timings. And next week we have a joint lesson on Tuesday, the 10th of December, from 4 to 6 p.m. Jerusalem time. And then on Friday, the 20th of December, we have the last lesson of our course. And it's at another different time. It's from 9 to 10:30 in the morning, Jerusalem time. So do you have any questions about next week? Takwa.
I want to ask what activities we will do in the next session.
Good question. Okay. First activity is we will check on the final principle. I will give you the homework. Well, I'll give you the homework now, Takwa. Okay. At the beginning of the course, excuse me, I don't know if Nazmi, if you remember that on the very first day of our course, you asked us if we could start with interaction. Nazmi, do you remember? Are you?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I do remember. Yeah.
Nazmi, you said that for you, interaction is central to successful language learning, and I completely agreed with you. Yeah. But I think it's a fantastic way to finish our short course, because in a way, for me, all of the principles lead up to principle number 8, because I agree with Nazmi that interaction is so important. Okay, so Nazmi, now perhaps you understand why I wanted to finish with principle 8.
Okay.
Because I agree it's so important. Yeah. So
can I add?
Yeah.
Can I add one point here on interaction?
Yeah.
So it's time now to prove this interaction between Palestinian students and the students of Northumbria, and also interaction with Rod Ellis in the last session. So it's like crowning this, and that's very wise of you, Bill. Thank you. So crowning all these principles with interaction between not only our students and you, but also between our students and your students, and also with Rod Ellis, hopefully in the next 2 sessions.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Nazmi. So to return to Takwa's question, I think that one thing we will do at the beginning next week is that we will talk about principle 8, which talks about interaction. Okay. And then we will have a little bit of revision about all of the principles that we've studied. And then together, we will put you into small groups. So maybe 2 students from the Islamic University of Gaza with 2 students from Northumbria University. And you can think of some questions that you could ask Professor Ellis. Okay, so you can talk together about what you think is important as language teachers and what questions you're still unsure about, which you can ask Professor Ellis. Takwa, did that answer your question?
No, I want to ask you, how many students will there be from your university?
I don't know. We have 20 students at my university, just like we have 20 students on this course. I don't know how many will be able to come because I can never predict student numbers. I hope we will have 10 students. I hope we will have 10 students at least, and I will be very happy if we have more. Yeah, it's difficult because my students, this is the first time that they will do an online lesson, so they are not experienced with Zoom lessons like you. But I hope that we will have a good number. Does that answer your question, Takwa? Yeah. Do you have any other questions? Asil.
Yes, I would ask that the meeting with Professor Ellis should be like asking him a question just or what?
Well, certainly we will ask him. You can ask him any questions that you next week. I hope that you will think of some questions to ask Professor Ellis. Okay, so when you maybe this weekend you can think of some questions. When you meet my students from Northumbria, you can think of some more questions. So in the final session, you will have a chance to ask Professor Ellis the questions that you think about. But I think Professor Ellis will not stay with us for all of the lesson because he you know where he lives? He lives in New Zealand. So for him, it will be very late in the evening. So perhaps he will go to bed. Okay. So Asil, I'm not sure how the final lesson will be organized exactly. Okay. I know some of my colleagues would like to meet you. So I will invite my colleagues to come and say hello to you. Would you be happy to meet my colleagues?
Yes, of
Yes.
course.
Good. That's a very enthusiastic answer. Okay.
Very good.
I can see Nazmi laughing because, yeah, you are not
I,
sure.
I have full confidence in Palestinian students, and I can work with them and for them to challenge the whole world.
Okay. Well,
are you happy, ladies?
Yes.
Yes.
Of course,
For
we're happy.
sure.
Okay. Now, please, you need to understand for the final lesson, the timing is crazy. It will be at 9 o'clock in the morning in Palestine. Do you know what time that is in the UK?
I think it's 2 hours earlier.
11? 11?
No, 7.
6 or 7?
It's 7 in the morning here. So, and do you know what time it is in New Zealand on that at that time? I'm not sure. Salah, are you here, Salah? Do you remember what time 7 o'clock is in New Zealand?
7 o'clock in the
Yes,
evening.
I'm here right now.
Yeah. So
12 hours difference between UK and the New Zealand.
how many hours?
12 hours.
12 hours, yeah. So
7 a.m., 7 p.m.
yeah, okay. So yeah, the timings are very interesting. So my colleagues, some of them, I think Professor Ellis will be happy to talk at the beginning of the lesson at 7 p.m. in New Zealand.
Yeah, yeah. It
And
will
then
be 7 p.m., maybe 8
Very
p.m.
early.
maybe 8 p.m. Yeah, and then my colleagues, they will be having breakfast, waking up and having breakfast, and they will join us for the end of the lesson. I imagine it will be Nazmi, it will be a very unusual lesson. Yeah, do you agree?
I agree. You know, 7 o'clock, let me say to my students that 7 o'clock in the UK, as if it is 5 o'clock in the early morning in Gaza. Imagine you are going to attend a session at 5 o'clock in the morning in Gaza and remember, these are British colleagues interested in joining to see you ladies and to listen to you and watch how Bill is working and collaborating with us and supporting education in Gaza. So it's a good opportunity for you to prove that the Palestinians are really creative and dedicated to education and committed to excellence and not to success only.
And my colleagues are very friendly people. Okay, they will be very happy to meet you. Yeah. Okay. Any
It
more
will
questions?
be our project.
Fantastic. And I know I have such a high opinion of you as strong people and such a high opinion of your abilities in the English language that I am looking forward for you to meet my students next week. Okay. And I hope you will enjoy the experience. Nazmi.
I'm sure they will enjoy it. Thank you, Bill. In fact, let me just say a brief word here that what Bill and what we are doing, all of us here, is not only teaching about language teaching and language learning. It's more than that. There are certain things that can be gained implicitly, okay, indirectly. We are building bridges between us and the British and non-British also students who most of the students of Bill are international students from different countries. Not
No,
necessarily.
wait, Nazmi. No.
Yes.
Now I have moved on to a different type of student, and now I would say 90% of my students now, you are thinking of my previous job at Glasgow University, but my current job now, I would say 90% of my students are actually UK students.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you for also this. We are learning. You see, all of us are learning from this experience. It's not only the course. We're learning through technology. We're learning how to manage our time, how to save energy and power on our laptops and mobiles, and how we communicate, how we ask questions, how we communicate with Rod Ellis and with the British colleagues and professors. In fact, there are many things I'm sure you have learned implicitly, indirectly, and many things also excellently and creatively. Bill could activate your schemata very well. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday. Please tell your friends.
And you too.
Okay.
And you too.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you, Nazmin. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.